Okay, everybody, we'll go ahead and call to order. Thank you all for being here. We appreciate your patience. Thank you, my fellow commissioners and their designees for being here too. As we noted, folks are for joining us at home. Thank you all very much for that too. We are recording and both we've got cameras and speakers and all sorts of stuff here, so we can document this and refer back to it. Appreciate everybody joining us. Going to go pretty much verbatim here on the agenda call. This is the second meeting of the Quad Agency Child Care Initiative Commission as required in Texas Human Resource Code Chapter 74. Once again, my name is Joe Esparza. I'm the chairman and commissioner for employers here at the Texas Workforce Commission. I'd like to welcome everybody here and joining at home again. We'll say welcome to our commissioners and their designees for all the work that they've done in the interim to get this started. We do have some new faces here at the table with us. HHSC has changed their designee, and I'll allow this. We will let's go to TEA representation. Monica, would you like to say hello and talk about your role there at TEA?
Sure. Good afternoon. Oh. My name is Monica Martinez. I'm the Associate Commissioner for Standards and Programs at the Texas Education Agency. One of the areas that I oversee is early childhood education.
Very good. Thank you very much. Kristen, would you? Oh, okay. Well, let me see. Mrs. Hoff. Oh, Mr. Cox, there you are.
Clint Cox, I'm with Texas DFPS. I'm the director of document investigations.
Very good. Okay. Mr. Costrin, welcome to our game here today. Please introduce yourself and what your role is at HHSC.
Thank you. I'm David Costrin. I'm the Deputy Executive Commissioner of Regulatory Services at HHSC. I oversee all the regulatory programs, which includes child care regulation as one of the areas. So I will be taking Jordan Dixon's place. Jordan, who is our former Chief Policy and Regulatory Officer, she's actually moving to a new role at HHSC.
Very good, Dave. Thank you. We're happy to have you here. I'd also like to identify and say hello and thanks to the fellow commissioners that we have in the room here. Commissioner Trevino, who represents our labor department, and there you are, Brent Connett, Commissioner Brent Connett, who represents our public members on the 3-member commission. So thank you both commissioners for being here, and again, thank you all for the extra help and work that you are doing in the interim, working with our providers and our working and our workforce development groups out there across the state. Let's see. Today's meeting is being a live stream. I've mentioned this via Zoom. Virtual attendees are in a listen mode only. Virtual attendees who have registered to submit public comment will be allowed to unmute during their public comment time. On our agenda today, we will vote on approval of Quad Agency responses drafted to address the comments and suggestions received. We'll also hear from participating agency representatives with updates relevant to the Quad Agency's work. Also listen to invited testimony from Early Matters, Children at Risk, and the Texas Department of Insurance. So thank you all for being here. And also engage in discussion, consideration, and possible action on the Quad Agency reviewing pre-K partnerships and data collection, which I think we've identified that as something that is measurable, and we would like to make sure that we get better data on that. Then we'll have time for public comment before we adjourn. And before we get on to that, second point of order here is approval of Quad Agency responses to public comment receives. Members, there's a document in your packet titled Quad Agency Child Care Initiative Commission Responses to Public Comments dated March of 2026. And if you allow me to find that. Thank you, Reagan. Here. This document provides a detailed summary of all comments and suggestions received by the Quad Agency through or up to February 2026. It's grouped in themes. It includes agency responses to each grouping of suggestions outlining what may already be happening related to a specific issue, also identifying planned activities or barriers to suggested actions. And this will be posted on the Quad Agency website once all members approve of the content. I now give you a moment if you want to review it, if you may have reviewed it. We'll be posting it to our website so that we can kind of get back into more of the details. But at this time, I would like to request a motion to approve the content of the public comments document.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the Quad Agency response to public comments received.
Thank you. Thank you, David. Is there a second? Clint Cox seconds the motion. This has been motioned and seconded, and it is approved. Is approved by adopted. It's approved and adopted. So support that initiative. The Quad Agency will continue to provide this type of detailed account of comments and responses at regular intervals. Any comments received after February 28th of 26 will also be incorporated into the next document. Give me 1 second. Of notable comment, Senator Paxton has provided a question or comments, and one directed us, and I'm kind of looking at our commissioners as well as folks and staff and in the audience as well, on more input for parents, for more to seek more input on parents, and we will be obviously addressing that, and we'll be posting that in the next section of comments, just much like what we did with our first group. So I was very much appreciated the Senate and any of our legislators who are taking concern with their experience and their outreach to their constituents to get involved with the Quad Agency. So we appreciate their to the senator. Item 3 is participating agency updates relevant to the Quad Agency work. Basically, I think we could start. We are starting with Mr. Costron, David Costron, to provide updates from HHSC, and we'll let you have it, Dave.
All right. Well, thank you. As requested, I'm going to walk through an update on Rider 165 assessment, and of course, a recent licensing improvement that relates to change of ownership. So as some of you may be aware, Rider 165 from SB1 directs HHSC to contract with an independent review of child care rules and minimum standards. And the goal is to ensure our rules continue to support child health, safety, and welfare while aligning with state and federal law and best practices. And to ensure our independence, HHSC contracted with Texas A&M Health Science Center in October of 2025 to conduct this assessment. Once we receive that final report, statute gives us 90 days to respond. That response will outline how we plan to implement the recommendations, and it also we have to provide written justification for any recommendations that we choose not to adopt. And we're anticipating providing that response to the Office of the Governor before the end of the year, probably in December of 2026. The contractor does remain on schedule, which is great. The preliminary phase of work is nearing completion. This phase includes a review of best practice literature, our child care regulation operational procedures, our weighted enforcement system, and a legal analysis of all the current standards and requirements. This work is going to lay the foundation of the next phase of stakeholder engagement. The next phase does focus on hearing directly, as I said, from stakeholders. The contractor would be deploying online surveys to families, to HHS staff, to child care operators, and other external stakeholders. We are going to have an online focus group that will also conduct Well, it'll add depth and context to the survey feedback. Now shifting to our daycare change of ownership. This was an issue that was brought to us through a provider association. Under current law, childcare licenses cannot transfer when ownership changes, meaning that an existing license has to be revoked before another license can be issued for the same location. Historically, this has led to some service disruption, some financial impacts, including potential loss of Texas Rising Star subsidies. So to address this, our team implemented an expedited licensing process, which we rolled out effective March 6th of this year. With input from the Licensed Child Care Association, we developed this process. There is a provider letter that is out on our website, and it goes through all the steps. But the key part of it is that we start the process early, at least 60 days in advance, so that we can work through that process and have plenty of time so that the new license can be issued at the time that of the effective date of the change of ownership. And what that will accomplish is prevent any of the delays or potentially a shutdown in that particular circumstance. So that's what I have. I'll conclude my comments. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Very good, members. Any questions for David in the HHSC? I had one question. With Texas A&M being the contractor, you said that there was a report it's due at the end of the year to the governor.
It's actually due to us, I believe, around September 1.
Okay. And then
and then we will take that information and based off of that assessment, we will then develop changes to the rules or any recommendations that we choose not to. We'll include all that in the report to the governor.
Okay, great. Thank you for highlighting that. We now move on to ours, TWC. We're asking Allison Wilson to come join us, and she can provide our update for the Texas Workforce Commission.
Can you hear me? Here we go. Okay, so I have an update to share today regarding some rule changes to TWC's Chapter 809 Child Care Services rules. These are not all of the changes, but these are some that we wanted to call out in this meeting because we think they will be of interest to the audience here. And just for everyone's knowledge, these are currently proposed rules under development. They are expected to go before the commission in early May, at which point they will be posted for an official public comment period. So at this point, we're really in an information gathering, informal comment period. So there are a few things I want to highlight. The first one is a change to streamline the language in our rules around children who are receiving services from a recognized pre-kindergarten partnership. Our rules currently include some language to allow for direct referrals of these children to child care services if they're enrolled in a pre-K partnership program. I'm not a good sign when it starts going off on its own. These things go through batteries like nobody's business. And it's blinking at me, Jack. It's probably going to shut off again. Thank you. So the rule change that we had originally done isn't really working as intended, as planned.
Yeah, let's go ahead and pause for that.
Right.
Thank you again, Jack.
Thank you. Okay, so the way garden partnership, direct referrals was set up, hasn't really served the purpose as it was intended. So we're streamlining this to treat these children as a priority group in the same manner that we do other priority groups. So we are going to remove the language around those direct referrals, and instead this will be a new group under our priority to state level priorities. So we're hopeful that that will better support the intent. The second set of changes relates to impacts of childcare regulation licensing compliance on Texas Rising Star certification. So we're also recommending some streamlining and simplification of these impacts. Right now that includes suspension, star level drops, and probationary status, things that get triggered when a provider has particular licensing deficiencies or an accumulation of licensing deficiencies. We're recommending that we no longer look at medium high weighted deficiencies. We will only look at high weighted. So that again ensures the focus is really on the things that are most critical to impacting health and safety for children. We're also looking at eliminating the star level drop that is currently in rule, and instead making that a probationary status. So that way providers have a chance to recover, to make things right and not actually have the financial penalty of their star level dropping if they're able to correct the issues. So it'll also simplify because we will no longer have the complicated list of different probation types and star level drop. We're also recommending that for providers who are in a suspension status due to licensing deficiencies, that they be automatically reinstated after 6 months. And that triggers, a review of their licensing history to automatically make sure they're okay to come back in and to bring them back in. The way it's working right now, they actually have to request to come back in. And so that's just not really efficient. So we're looking to fix that. And then the last set of changes I'll bring your attention to is around Texas Rising Star program facility changes. So we made some changes a few years ago to our rules to account for programs that were buying out other programs and to allow Texas Rising Star status to carry forward when we felt like, a program was demonstrating they were going to be able to maintain that same level, same people working there and, all things the same. Well, there are lots of different flavors of facility changes. Sometimes they're ownership changes. Sometimes it may be the type of facility that's changing. It could be that they moved locations. There's just a whole lot of different ways this can happen. And a provider may not only be Texas Rising Star certified, they could also be in a negative status due to a suspension or probation. And none of that was accounted for in our previous rule changes. So we're making changes to clarify all the different situations and to outline all of that so that it's very clear to providers when they're, out there acquiring another program, they can understand what to expect, what status that program that they're purchasing will have once the change has gone through. I'm not going to go through all the details because it's several pages because, like I said, there are a lot of different flavors of these facility changes. But just know that we're happy to accept informal input right now to anyone that wants to provide that. And that can be submitted to our stakeholder feedback email, and that is ccel@twc.texas.gov. Now, also add that you can see a draft of the new Texas Rising Star screening form for those changes I talked about with the impacts for suspensions and probation. Any questions?
When did the changes take effect? I'm sorry if I missed, but went right through that.
So the proposed rules are expected to go forward in early May.
Yep.
And then they would be posted for a comment period. I think it's a 60-day comment period.
Mm-hmm.
And then we will have some time to address all of those changes. So, and then we will bring those back to the commission. And we would expect that to be sometime later in the summer with an effective date in early October.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure that there was just kind of broadcast a schedule of any kind of changes that we had. So thank you for response on that. I'm sorry, members, I should have let you go first. Y'all have any questions for us, TWC? Thank you, Allison. Appreciate it. Moving on to TEA's updates. Ms. Martinez, would you like to provide the updates for your agency?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Excuse me. So a few updates related to House Bill 2. For anyone who may not be familiar, that was a bill that was more than 200 pages long. So it is taking us just a moment to get through implementation of every aspect of that bill. But there are a number of provisions in the bill that are specific to early childhood, and I'll provide a couple of highlights. So one of the items in the bill increased eligibility for public pre-kindergarten to children of teachers in the school districts. So that's additional eligibility that went into place starting with the current school year. Another provision of the bill is related to clarifying requirements for teachers of pre-kindergarten classes. So in a previous legislative session, there were some adjustments made to provide some flexibility in who can teach in a partnership pre-kindergarten classroom. At that time, there was a provision added that if a teacher wasn't certified, they could be supervised. But the way the language was written, it appeared that every teacher had to have a supervisor regardless of certification. So that's been cleaned up to specify that you must either be certified or supervised by a certified teacher. Another provision of the bill was a little bit of cleanup related to how the teacher requirements are or are not applicable to teachers in pre-K3 classrooms. There was not clarity about whether or not the pre-K partnerships that serve 3-year-old children were subject to the same teacher qualification requirements, so that has been cleaned up as well. Once the bill passed, TEA did go in and update the administrative rules related to those teacher qualifications. Those rules have now been adopted and are in place. And then we've got a couple of provisions that were made applicable beginning with the 2027-2028 school year. One of those is that before a school district can charge tuition, there has to be a determination by an intermediary that there is not an available seat for that child in a private pre-kindergarten setting. The bill also requires us to identify 4 intermediaries that will support pre-kindergarten partnerships across the state. They will oversee the determinations related to whether or not public pre-kindergarten school districts can charge tuition for public pre-kindergarten, and they will also be working to support what we hope will be a continued expansion over those partnership programs. So we expect that there will be a competitive solicitation that will go out later this spring to identify those 4 intermediaries and get them in place prior to the 27-28 school year. The last thing that I'll highlight that I think is probably a lesser known aspect of the bill is that we are also required to collect additional data on vision screenings and identifying time is almost done. Children who have vision disorders, recognizing that oftentimes if a child has reading difficulties, it could be due to a vision issue as opposed to a learning issue. And so we are also about to go out with a competitive solicitation to identify a vendor to assist with the collection of that data that we will begin reporting once we've got that collection going. There is, for anyone who is not aware, we do provide updates on the TEA website. The easiest way to get there is to go to tea.texas.gov, and in the search, if you type in 89th legislature, there is a page that provides regular updates, including dates by which different decisions will be made or additional resources will be available. There are also frequently asked questions documents related to all the different aspects of the bills and some summary documents related to House Bill 2.
Very good. Thank you, Monica. Appreciate that. Members, any questions for TEA and their updates? All good. Moving on to item 9, invited testimony. We'll start with early matters, and Wendy Uptain, if you would like to come on up and present. Thank you for being here.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Rochelle, for passing that around. Thank you for the invitation to join you this afternoon, and for the work you're doing. The work you're leading around governance may not be sexy or exciting to our parents if we were describing it or telling them about it, but it really is significant to families and to providers and many other stakeholders across the state. So really appreciate you convening this group, Chairman, and for all of you for being here. My name is Wendy Uptain. I'm the Executive Director for Early Matters Texas. Some of you may know about Early Matters. We are a coalition, statewide coalition of business, civic, nonprofit, philanthropic leaders that have community coalitions in 9 regions across the state. We represent about 50% of the children under the age of 8 in our state. So it's about 1.7 million kids. And we're also, Early Matters is a founder of the Employers for Childcare Task Force, or E4C, which I know many of you are familiar with. We at our organization see early childhood really as this catalyst for improving education, workforce, and the economy, and that intersection of all 3 of those things. I'm here today to share about our report. You've got a little copy of it here in front of you. We this fall and going into this winter, we worked to hear from providers and family members and business leaders from all across the state, really to listen. We just wanted to hear after this bill passed, what are their pain points? What are the things that they are feeling like this initiative could maybe help them solve for? And what we heard back were some stories of real frustration, but really there was also this undercurrent of hope. Because while the challenges are real and in many cases structural, the level of alignment that we need around the solutions is something that we just don't see very often. We're seeing this convergence of many different bodies coming together to talk about this, and that creates a real window of opportunity. So the 2 things I'll just, will not read this to you today. The couple of things I just want to highlight. So 1, we did a survey. We heard from over 700 childcare providers in all the 28 workforce board areas. And then we conducted focus groups with over 70 people coming to those to just give us, so that gave us the lay of the land, and then some depth and context and some stories, to go around with that. So what I want to do today is just summarize a little bit what we heard from the survey, color commentary and some highlights from the focus groups, common themes across both of those, and then just highlight a few of the recommendations to put before you. You all can obviously discuss all 9 at later on. So I'll start with the survey findings. So the first thing here is that the providers really consistently described a system where there is no single source of truth. About a third report inconsistent expectations across the different agencies. About another third say that they've received conflicting guidance at some point in time. And more than 60% say that overlapping requirements create confusion, extra work, or even added cost. So we heard about variation in communication response time depending on the agency. I think I've talked to all your agencies and kind of shared a little bit about that and what we found. One provider really described as trying to satisfy multiple sets of rules that don't fully align. That sentiment came through again and again, that providers aren't navigating a single system, they're navigating multiple systems at the same time. So the second thing is that the compliance burden seems to be pulling the focus away from children. On average, providers reported spending 52 hours a month on compliance-related activities. That's more than a full work week every month navigating this system. And 44% say that burden directly interferes with their ability to focus on quality for kids. That actually jumped to over 80% for some of the larger childcare providers. So this really isn't, it's more than just an administrative inconvenience. It's about the trade-offs that some of these providers are making, either taking care of children or having to navigate the complexity of the systems. So the area that came up as the most difficult to navigate was really between licensing and TRS, which is no surprise, probably. And providers noted that they're just being asked to do things that just fundamentally conflict. I'll share with this body here. I've been able to share some of this in previews with a couple of the agencies here, but one provider shared in particular about bookshelves that they with TRS that they're supposed to have bookshelves in the classroom, but that with licensing standards, you also need to be able to see the children. And so it's been flagged to them with an inspector to say, well, you can't have the bookshelf in the classroom. And so these providers are really being left to say, what do we do? Like if we're hearing two different things, how do we, which is the single source of truth, and what do we recommend? What are we supposed to follow? And the last thing is just that from the survey is that the system really, we just found that it not easily understood by some of the folks here and by some of the providers. They weren't even clear which agency necessarily oversees which program. When you start to get down to the workforce boards and some of the subcontractors and some of the different initiatives, just a lack of clarity, I think, around who does what. Okay, so I'm going to jump to focus groups now. So this is where we got a little bit more of the color commentary, some of the qualitative information. What we heard, so we had the opportunity to have families as part of these focus groups, and we heard that families, maybe this helps with the Senator Paxton question, I'm not sure, but that families are navigating the same fragmentation as the childcare providers. So we heard about reapplication fatigue, where parents were experiencing different eligibility rules depending on the different programs, different timelines, and even highly informed families were struggling to navigate this. There was particular call out with ECI, or the early childhood intervention, saying that there's like a cliff that happens with no smooth transition into pre-K. So this was just really common that we heard also about kids disappearing from the system whenever they're going from one program to the next, and the data systems are sort of speaking different languages and don't necessarily talk to each other, so you lose the kid from place to place. We also heard a lot about the licensing inspectors, and the licensing inspectors are really where the rubber meets the road. Those are the folks that are in those childcare settings and reviewing. The survey surfaced that providers were experiencing both, positive and negative experiences with their inspectors, and the focus groups provided us with a little bit more information, saying that they had inspectors who actually openly disparaged the Texas Rising Star system, or suggested that they had to find something to write up because it would prove to their boss that they were doing their job. So regardless of whether there was an actual compliance issue. The last thing we heard, and this is probably no surprise, I'm looking at you, Reagan, because we hear this a lot with in this field, is that reimbursement rates don't always match the cost of providing care, but it was specifically targeted to infants, toddlers, and children with special needs. So related to that, we also know that providers are struggling to pay educators a salary that's reflective of their professional experience. So we heard from a couple of focus group members, some in El Paso, since they have they're a border city, and they're right next to New Mexico, and New Mexico has established pretty universal childcare. Their neighbors are making about $25 an hour compared to the median rate of $9.18 in El Paso. So there's a struggle there. But even we heard about this in the Permian Basin, where teachers are making $13 an hour, but that same person could go work at a restaurant for $15 or $18 an hour. And so that competition came up in that focus group. The last thing that came up and is worth talking about is that early childhood educators are classified at the same level as janitors and pet groomers. And so while wages are definitely part of the issue, this came up with, is there a deeper challenge about how the system is defining this workforce? And is there something there to maybe dig into? So taken all together, focus groups and the survey data, we really heard that like childcare providers are not simply experiencing one bureaucratic issue. It's actually that providers, families, businesses, they're all navigating a system that was never designed to function collectively or as a whole. So the consequences are then borne by those by the families and then the children. So the three things sort of taken all together, the three themes from all of this. One is that fragmentation is really the root cause, not just a symptom. So the duplicative paperwork, conflicting standards, all of that traces back to a system that has evolved around individual agencies, not necessarily the families and children that they're meant to serve. And that is not, I would just add, that's not like anything to say about the individual agencies. It's really just that I think all of you are doing your job and doing it really well. It's just that there's multiple of them. And so families are left sort of piecing it together. And so families aren't able to navigate, providers aren't able to figure out who's responsible for what. And then there's just sort of this genuine confusion that comes up. We put together, you can look over this later, we put together 9 recommendations based off of what we heard. For the sake of time, I'm just going to highlight a handful of them. They kind of go in descending order from like some quick wins to some longer term things that also can tie in with some of the other governance work that's happening. The governor's early childhood task force, and then we know sunset review is also going to be happening this year, or is in process, I guess. So the first couple I would just call out. One is we would recommend publishing a clear organizational chart that maps out all 4 agencies, the programs, who does what, just something very simple, I think, that could be shared broadly with everybody to see, okay, the workforce boards fall under TWC and the workforce boards are responsible for X, Y, and Z, or this subcontractor is responsible for that. So I think that could go a long way. Another idea is that we just think that providers need really some unified governance on what to do when there are requirements that conflict, particularly between licensing and TRS. Although we did hear an example about a TEA TEA and childcare conflict too. So I think if I remember correctly, it was if you're at a school, you need to have like a single point of entry and like locked doors, but childcare centers need to have it like accessible for families. And so like, what do you do when you've got like those 2 different things? We were being told 2 different things. I'll maybe mention just 1 or 2 others because I don't know how much time I have, Commissioner. So one of the things we heard was that there were just different communication styles and processes across the agencies. So establishing some sort of standards across the 4 agencies could be helpful. Another thing that came up was Texas Rising Star assessment wait times. We know that there was sort of a convergence of a new assessor contract and this expansion of Rising Star participation requirements for any provider receiving childcare subsidies. So that created a bottleneck. So our survey validates that there was, we had like 6-month wait times for providers who are waiting to be reassessed. And so I would just say, monitor that to see if this was really a one-time issue or if it continues to be a problem. And then just to kind of wrap things up with a holistic thing is really this idea of unified governance. And it really came up, the desire for unified governance with really clear leadership. So I think in closing, in my role, and I know you all get the opportunity to do this too, in traveling around Texas, I get to hear from rural, suburban, urban stakeholders who are really in this, providers and families who are waiting waiting on the wait list, or a provider who's gone through the process. And everyone, I think, is really trying to make this work. The providers are very willing. They want to be supportive. They want to be accountable, but they also want to just sort of understand how to navigate. And I would just say, I think what you guys are doing here today is exactly what providers and what the community has been asking for, coming together to help wrestle with this and answer some really hard questions. And so Early Matters is here to help support that however we can, whether that's gathering more data, convening people, convening stakeholders, or answering questions. So with that, I'm happy to answer questions. But thank you again for having me.
Thank you, Ms. Uptain. I don't know if I'm allowed to do this, but or if there's any rules of order, but I kind of want to submit the head nods into the affirmative of support that are happening behind your remarks and your recommendations. This is very, very clear and concise, and I know that we had the opportunity to take a look at it, and thank you for meeting with our agency on your findings. Before I get to member questions again, I'm going to take the initiative here to do. I have one specific question that you brought up about the payment discrepancies. If you're able to expand upon what payment discrepancies lie mostly like in infant and toddler. I know in the past we were working with some of our providers to basically clarify what we call the blended rate. And again, thanks to Allison and Reagan for their help in explaining it to me, but also in an effort to clarify it. Are we talking about the same issue here as a blended rate? What you were finding is what your stakeholders or focus group was bringing up. Is that the same? Does it sound the same? Can you expand
That's a
upon
good question. I need to go back. I'll need to go back and check the focus group data. I know that Reagan and Allison and Rochelle, we've talked a little bit about this, and I think having the conversation with you all clarified, especially around children with special needs, that there's some extra opportunities there.
Okay.
That I just think there's a chance to be able to go back and share that with the stakeholders who participated in this.
Okay. Thank you for that. Members, any questions for Ms. Uptain?
Yes, and thank you. This is tremendous work. This is the type of work that gives us a lot of feedback about not only our staff, but how the process is or is not working. So I really appreciate that. In fact, I think we have a great opportunity as we go through regulatory reform. And as I talked about earlier with our Rider 165 initiative to look at all the daycare rules, perfect opportunity to take a lot of what you have here and work through that, particularly with our third party contractor. I don't know if you've engaged with them yet.
Yes, they did. They reached out to us, and then I connected them with some of our members, our coalition members across the state. We're all looking forward to it.
Okay, thank you. And we should probably talk later because I don't know if there's any way to get any of the without getting. I know there's probably it's a confidential survey. Certainly don't want to share names, but if we could get some more of that information, it really would help us on your recommendation for established consistent standards and accountability for licensing inspectors. I do want to let you know that one of our 4 guiding principles that we lay out for our team, whether they're in child care or healthcare regulation or long-term care regulation, the whole team is a focus on 4 guiding principles, which is quality, consistency, efficiency, and accountability. And I think I heard all of those in this report. So that is one that I really want to engage more to learn more about what your findings are. So thank you for your work.
Thank you, Mr. Cochran. Mr. Cox.
I want to say thank you as well. The information I've received even previous to this meeting with you and discussing and things like that. I think there are a lot of lessons learned and everything for our investigators, inspectors, even just sometimes understanding the spider web of all the different agencies. That's something that as we go through and work through everything, it's even challenging for us at times. So I can only imagine for others. So I think that there's some great information, great recommendations in here. So thank you for your work on it.
Thank you, Mr. Cox. Okay. Wendy, I also want to submit my my appreciation again to the survey. It was a pretty monumental task to spread out, and y'all have a great chapter relationship to support this initiative. Again, we operate on a feedback system, and this is the opportunity to provide something to this nature and this magnitude to be able to not only for transparency, but just kind of to show us what is working in the field actively, and especially when it comes to the exchange with businesses and parents alike. Not to mention our providers. So thank you for putting this put pen to paper and submitting it to the Quad Agency initiative. We appreciate that, and we're going to continue to work with you to find solutions for this. So thank you, Wendy. We appreciate it. Next up, we have a presentation from Children at Risk, Kim Coughlin. Ms. Coughlin.
Good afternoon.
Believe we can hear you. Thank you.
All right. we
Please
can hear.
proceed.
There's no blinking light. So thank you for having me, commissioners and staff. It's great to be with you, and thanks for the opportunity that this commission has really been able to dig in around this spider web of regulations. My name is Kim Coughlin. I am the Executive Director of Early Childhood Education at Children at Risk. For nearly a decade, Children at Risk has worked to bridge what the data shows us and around early care and education with what communities, families, providers, and educators identify as their needs and priorities. And this alignment brought us to this alignment then between these lived experiences and the data then shows and strengthens what our recommendations and our work. With that in mind, last fall, along with our annual Texas tour, where we go out to 12 different communities across the state and visit with stakeholders and childcare providers and families, we also did a survey to Texas childcare providers, and we were able to receive over 1,300 respondents. 90% of those were childcare providers themselves, representing all 28 local workforce boards. And we really wanted to dig in to see where their experiences lay. Across all responses, providers expressed a deep commitment to children's safety and high quality care. They also shared significant frustration with a fragmented system and heavy administrative burdens and unclear, contradictory expectations that make it harder to operate a stable, representative childcare program. So you have the full report in front of you in your packet. I'm too, like Wendy, I'm going to highlight just a part of those. They were kind of broken in 5 different areas. You will hear a lot of similarities to what Wendy presented, which I think bows to the fact that this is what we're hearing is consistent, and what we're hearing across the state is something that that is not a one-off. So the first real area, we took all the feedback and grouped them into 5 different areas, is governance and statewide coordination. Providers described a fragmented oversight structure with responsibilities divided between Health and Human Services, the Child Care Regulation, TWC, TEA, and of course DFPS. The lack of alignment results in conflicting guidance and unclear decision-making and uneven expectations for programs serving the same age children. Providers told us rules change constantly. Childcare representatives interpret the rules differently, as a quote, leading to unpredictable enforcement. One provider said that they had no issues with the playground, got a new licensing rep, and now there was an issue with the swing that they had no problem with before. And then many highlighted the difference between public school pre-K at TEA standards versus the standards of minimum standards at Health and Human Services. Providers are asking for a more coordinated regulatory structure that, as well as agency and cross-agency training on standards that would remove some of those conflicts in guidance. And I think Wendy's example of the bookshelf is another great example of those differences of training that could really clear up some of those issues. Universal statewide rules for programs serving the same age children with clear protocols and accountability to ensure consistent guidance and enforcement across those agencies. The second real big bucket was regulatory alignment and oversight modernization and workforce capacity. The mix of inconsistent expectations and heavy administrative burdens make it hard for providers to plan, operate smoothly, and feel confident that they are meeting requirements. These conditions ultimately cost providers time and staff and overall stability. Across the state, providers were experiencing duplicative documentation, rules that shift without warning, inspectors that apply rules unevenly, some supportive and some punitive. Comments from the survey participants clearly illustrated how challenges and workforce shortage reinforce one another, creating the circle of making it harder for programs to recruit, hire, and retain staff. One quote was, different inspectors tell us different things. How are we supposed to get it right? These providers want to get it right. And so how do we make sure that even with childcare regulation turnover, those barriers are reduced? Several providers mentioned frustrations about when they self-report or reach out to ask questions and inadvertently raise a red flag, stating that this results in providers not wanting to reach out, which they should be able to reach out and ask those questions. Many reported delays also in receiving the results of fingerprint and background checks, leaving critical positions unfilled for weeks or even months. Providers are asking to implement a unified training and robust statewide collaboration for all regulatory and quality staff to reduce those inconsistency in standard interpretation. Oversight practices that are modernized and grounded in support, not punishment, and a background check process that responds to workforce needs and reduces onboarding delays. The third area is contracting accountability and performance management. This theme really surfaced around, especially in connection with childcare services, reimbursement delays, and inconsistent contracting requirements across various local workforce boards. Providers describe financial administration systems that feel unreliable or unpredictable, difficult to navigate. Some examples included from the field: unclear performance expectations are shifting, documentation requirements from childcare services, accountability structures that fall heavily on providers, while state and local systems face few consequences. One director quoted, "If we are held accountable, so should the state agencies." Providers are asking for a streamlined contracting and performance accountability measures across systems and localities, and for predictable timelines and quality assurance for providers as well as the state and local systems. The fourth area is around technology and data systems. Many shared that broken portals and outdated interfaces limit visibility into regulatory processes, creating daily challenges and slow down essential tasks. Instead of supporting programs, these systems often add frustration and uncertainty. Many providers commented on difficulty to download childcare from childcare regulations website. One said, without a subscription to Adobe, it's impossible to obtain the forms. So other voices were challenged. The website is challenging and not built for people who don't have hours to dig. Providers are asking for a shared user-centered system that allows parents and providers to easily access information, forms, and regular communication. And then finally, the fifth area is the application and streamlining for families and for providers. Providers consistently describe challenges related to access and maintaining services, both from their programs and for their families they serve. Many shared that eligibility processes, onboarding, and confusing duplicative systems create delays in those sustained operations and limit access to care. Providers feel they spend more time in compliance than serving children, which I think Wendy's survey also showed, and conflicting eligibility information between providers and programs provide it difficult for parents and for families. Providers are asking for a single integrated system for families and providers for applications and renewals, and shared eligibility systems that allow parents to apply once to qualify for multiple supports that they might be eligible for. So in summary, and in your report, there's a lot more details to all these 5 buckets, but to highlight, design a purposeful unified governance with system-wide coordination to improve efficiency and quality, synthesize key regulations to reduce confusion and improve regulatory alignment, improve oversight and contracted services to ensure quality performance, update technology and data systems to aid in transparency and reliability, and simplify and streamline the application for both parents and for providers. As Texas looks to our next chapter in supporting the early care and education sector, there is a critical opportunity not only to continue investing in quality, but to reimagine how early childhood systems can work in coordination. Greater alignment across agencies can reduce administrative burden, improve efficiencies, and create a more navigable system for both parents and providers without compromising accountability or quality standards. The survey the results of the survey point at clear pictures. Providers are not opposed to accountability and high standards. They are opposed to systems that are poorly designed and inconsistently applied. So the burdensome that they are distracted from what matters most, which is delivering that high quality early learning experiences that supports children's development and allows their parents to go to work. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Coffin. Members, any questions for children at risk?
I just want to give the same comment. In fact, I was thinking if we're planning on doing a survey, I don't think we need to do it. We've got two really good surveys here that's providing some excellent information. So really thank you for the information. Again, if there's any way you can share any of the remarks or the comments, that would be extremely useful. We'll spend time evaluating this as well, but thank you for your work.
Yep.
Ms. Caution. Clint? Yeah, I echo that, and as well as this survey and its findings do well to complement our Early Matters survey and the work that they're doing. So again, we appreciate that work that you're spearheading for us here too. So without that, we appreciate it, Ms. Coughlin. Thank you so much. And from the state, we're very excited to welcome our Texas Department of Insurance representatives, Kenesha Schuster and Marianne Baker. Thank you all so much for being here to represent the state, especially the agency of TDI. You guys are welcome to commence your presentation as you are. Press it. See if it turns green.
Okay. Do you want to introduce yourself? Should I introduce you? So I'm Marianne Baker, and this is Kenesha Schuster. Kenesha is in our government relations office, and I am in the property and casualty lines office. I'm the director, and my office reviews insurance policy forms for pretty much many kinds of insurance. We also write rules, help with legislation, and generally try to provide information for inquiries and other things that will make a difference. I put together some information here, sort of largely based on some questions Rochelle sent over. I hope that it is useful to you. Please feel free to ask questions as we go along. I want to be sure that you understand what I'm talking about and that you get everything that you need. Along those lines, insurance has a lot of very technical terminology. I will try to explain those as I go along, but if I miss something, please feel free to stop me. So I'll get started walking through three things. First, a brief overview of child care facility liability insurance, a little bit about underwriting and availability, and some alternatives to the normal insurance market. So what do we mean when we talk about child care facility liability insurance? Well, the core is what is statutorily required. Insurance coverage for each occurrence of negligence that results in injury to a child that occurs while a child is on the premises or in the care of the child care facility. So what kind of policy covers that? The policy type or line of insurance, which is a term we use, is commercial general liability. And that type of insurance typically covers bodily injury and property damage. So that will provide the statutorily required coverage for injury to a child. It also provides more coverage typically. It'll cover a parent slipping on a sidewalk, or it'll cover the personal property of the children, parents, visitors, if it's damaged or stolen. Another key point that insurance will cover is defense costs. So not only will it cover, for example, an injury to a child, but if there's a lawsuit, It will provide coverage for lawyer fees and court costs for the facility and its staff, and that can be a big expense, even if the claim is not that large. Many facilities also carry other kinds of insurance coverage that they're not statutorily required, but they do help provide coverage for the facility. If the facility has a teaching component like Montessori, they might have professional liability insurance. They might have, if it's a bigger facility, they might have directors and officers coverage to cover worker liability. They might have workers' compensation and employment practices liability. If their GL policy doesn't cover it, they might have separate abuse and molestation coverage. If they provide transportation, they might have commercial auto coverage. Typically, a facility will also have some first-party coverage, property coverage like wind and hail, fire, theft coverage, or maybe lost business income in case, there's a hurricane or something and they have to stop their business for a while. So where do you usually get this kind of coverage, this general liability coverage or GL? It comes from both admitted market insurers and surplus lines insurers. So what's an admitted market insurer? An admitted insurance company is one that is licensed by the state of Texas, by the Department of Insurance, and they are pretty closely regulated. They're also called licensed or authorized. A surplus lines insurer is also regulated, but they are regulated at a lower level. They are also called non-admitted. Surplus lines insurers write the business that the admitted market won't write. That might be so that there can be coverage if the market gets tighter. Companies are conserving their capital and not wanting to take as much risk in the market. They might provide coverage for new kinds of risks in the market or very high risk or hard to insure risks. So those are the sort of two general markets that people can find coverage in. And I alluded to somewhat of this, but what are the differences? So the admitted market, there's more regulation, more consumer protections. For example, my office reviews policy forms and another office reviews rates for admitted market insurers to make sure that they comply with the law. There's a guarantee fund. What's a guarantee fund? A guarantee fund is a state-created entity that provides money to pay claims if an insurer becomes insolvent. So that can be very useful in that's a very rare occasion, but it has happened. Surplus lines insurers are less regulated, so they don't file forms and rates. The guarantee fund protection doesn't apply. Both kinds of companies have claim handling statutes and regulations. The claim handling deadlines for surplus lines companies are longer. They have more time to review and pay a claim than an admitted market company. So something to know generally about companies. You won't find in the child care liability market a whole lot of coverage written by the big name companies that you recognize, the ones that advertise on TV, the ones you know from homeowners and auto. You're not going to find a lot of coverage written by Travelers, State Farm, Allstate, all those companies that you really recognize. Usually it's going to be written by specialty insurers that focus on more smaller niche coverages like child care coverage or human services programs. And you will find, particularly in a harder market as we are right now, more coverage written in the surplus lines. And I should mention right now, agents. So you typically access child care facility insurance through an agent. And there's sort of three kinds of agents. There's direct or captive agents that work particularly for a specific insurance company, like State Farm agents or Allstate agents. Then there are independent agents. And an independent agent can write insurance for a variety of different companies, maybe 5 companies, maybe 20 companies. And then there are surplus lines agents. And surplus lines agents obviously write surplus lines coverage, but they're different than the other agents in that they don't have retail clients. Their clients, the people who come to them, are the retail agents, the agents that you would go to, that the facility would go to. So the way that system sort of works is if you went to an agent and they were unable to find you coverage that worked for you for whatever reason, whether it's because they couldn't find a company that had it, couldn't find a price that you were comfortable with, they would turn to the surplus lines agent. And you can't get to the surplus lines agent until the retail agent has made a diligent effort. Once they've done that, they can go to the surplus lines agent who will then look for coverage in their market. So a question that I've been asked occasionally is, will homeowners insurance cover in-home daycare liability? The answer is generally no. Homeowners insurance is for your own personal risks. And if you are doing daycare as a business for compensation, an insurance company is going to look at that as a business risk. So you're going to need extra coverage. You might need a separate policy, or sometimes companies will write you a special endorsement specifically for that business risk, but it's going to be separate. So next, let's talk a little bit about some challenges that facilities may have with finding coverage. One thing Rochelle mentioned was that there's no statewide or internet search tool that really aims at childcare coverage. I'm sure if you've gone on the internet looking for insurance for your auto or your home, you're going to find tons of sites that aggregate lots of companies. We'll get you bids from all these different places. There's those kinds of aggregators and those kinds of internet sites don't really exist for very small niche markets like the child care facility market. So that makes it a challenge. You have to go find an agent who is writing that kind of coverage. For some facilities, and I'm sure you all are aware of this, the cost has become an issue. Costs in child care facility coverages have gone up just as they have in many kinds of insurance over the past few years. Another issue is underwriting guidelines. So what is an underwriting guideline? An underwriting guideline is an insurance company's internal rules or standards that they use to decide whether to accept or reject an applicant for coverage. And they can also use it to determine what conditions and what rate they might apply. Each company has their own. They vary by company. They are confidential, but they tell the underwriter, the person who decides whether to write the coverage or not, what to look at. So they would tell them to go look at the operations of the child care facility, look at their risk management programs, look at their regulatory compliance history. So looking sort of from an underwriter perspective, why are child care facilities hard to insure? Well, first of all, we're dealing with children, and that creates the possibility for high severity claims. Children can get hurt, and that can be a pretty big risk. And again, as I've sort of mentioned several times, it's a small specialized niche. There's not a big market compared to, homeowners or auto market. And it also requires underwriters to have a good bit of expertise to understand this industry that is very different than other small businesses, very different than, say, a clothing boutique. So if an underwriter doesn't have the specialization, they may choose not to write that coverage at all. So that means the number of companies writing it is smaller than it is in some other markets. So what are underwriters looking at when they evaluate a child care facility? Well, they focus on the factors that drive liability. They're going to look into licensing and compliance history. They're going to look at things like staff to child ratios, staff background checks and training, whether the facility has adequate written policies and good supervision practices. They'll look at the physical layout and playground safety, whether there are water activities. They'll look at whether they have transportation exposures. Do they take the kids out anywhere or pick them up? What might cause an underwriter to decline to write a policy for a specific facility? Well, common reasons might include a poor loss history, very recent or repeated licensing violations. They do check those sorts of things. Weak documentation of procedures or incidents. They might be less inclined to write a brand new operation with no track record. And of course, there's particular obvious exposures like unsafe playground equipment. They're not going to want to jump onto that risk. So what about availability of child care insurance in the market today? Does TDI, Department of Insurance, do we know which companies are writing child care insurance? Not really, no. We can see which insurance companies file programs that reference child care when they come and file their forms and rates, but there's not a specific line of business for child care insurance. For example, companies often file sort of generic business owner packages, and they'll have standard general liability forms and maybe some other forms. Here's an auto form we'll add on, or different things like that. But they might not tell us what type of business they intend to write. They might not even know when they file it, and they can change it over time. And even for those companies that have made filings specifically mentioning childcare products, we don't track which companies actively write those products. Like you, we might occasionally hear if a company decides to start writing in that market, but we don't have a way to track the whole industry. Another question that has come up relates to House Bill 2789. And that was the bill that reduced I did a number of things, but among the things it did was reduce the amount of childcare liability insurance that facilities were required to have. And it reduced it from 300,000 to 100,000. I'm sure y'all know all about that. And the question is, has that made a difference? Has that made it easier to get childcare insurance? And the short answer is, we don't know yet. That piece of that bill was effective in January. So it's still really early days yet. As the renewal cycle goes through the year and over the next couple of years, we may see some change in that, but we can't tell you that yet. So what can a facility do now to enhance their ability to find coverage? Well, this is sort of, go do what the underwriters are looking for. Work to become a better risk. Improve your compliance if it's not up to snuff. Clean licensing record is going to go a long way. Have your clear written policies. Make sure you have proof of your staff background checks and training. These are all things that a good agent is going to ask for when you go in to apply for insurance. You want to have well-documented incident reports. If there have been problems in the past, you want evidence that you've corrected them in the future. So having that sort of package of information ready is going to make it a lot easier to get insurance. And those don't guarantee it, but they can remove some of the more common underwriting objections. Another thing that you can do is, I alluded to this, is shop through independent agents. Even if Allstate or Progressive writes those insurance, and they may, and you can go to them, but if you don't get what you want, go to an independent agent. That independent agent is going to have access to a variety of companies and may be able to offer you this package at this price or slightly different coverage at a different price. And if that agent can't get you what you need, go to a different agent. There are lots of agents and they don't all overlap in terms of the companies that they write coverage for. So the next question is, what are the alternatives if this is sort of a market-wide issue and the coverage doesn't exist or isn't affordable for childcare facilities? What can they do? So I'll talk about a couple of potential alternatives: purchasing groups and the Texas Child Care Facility Liability Pool. So what is a purchasing group? A purchasing group is not an insurance company. Instead, it's a group of businesses, like child care facilities, with similar liability exposures, and they buy insurance policies together as a group. And they'll get policies that are tailored to their specific kind of risks. So how would that work for child care facilities? One way could be that an existing group, if there's for example, a trade group of child care facilities that already exists, could find an agent and work with them to create a purchasing group. The agent would work with an insurance company to design a liability program, especially for that group. The insurance company could then use the same coverage, the same policy forms, a similar rating structure for all the facilities in that group. Each facility would still get its own policy or certificate, its own rate, but there would be some efficiencies created in putting together the group. And that can lead to potential cost savings, which is one of the real advantages of a purchasing group, because a group may have more bargaining power. You've added those economies of scale and efficiencies, and so you may be able to get lower premiums and maybe some better terms and conditions. Another thing that's a sort of a feature of purchasing groups across all industries is that they may have standards for what it takes to join the group. So they may have risk management standards, and they may have educational materials and guidelines to help improve the general risks of the whole group. And that again can translate into cost savings. Among the other benefits then are tailored coverage, specially designed and created in advance for the group. And it can also make it easier to find coverage, whereas a company might not want to write, this daycare facility and that childcare facility. They might be willing to work with a group of 30 because that might be a sufficient block to create a profitable business market. In addition to sort of the administrative efficiency for the insurance company and the agent, there may be some efficiencies for the members of the group, because they don't have to go hunt down an agent, find out, talk to them in detail about coverage. They'll know that it's kind of all put together for their industry. And again, I mentioned the sort of enhanced risk management that they may get sort of services from their group on how to manage their risk and how to make themselves a better risk for the insurance company. And that obviously protects the children and the workers and all those things. So are there drawbacks to purchasing groups? There are a few. They're not typically for everyone. If you're not a facility that already belongs to that group, you can't, or if you can't qualify to belong to that group, if you don't have a good enough compliance record or can't get up to compliance, you might not be able to join the group. A purchasing group under Texas law won't necessarily be able to provide all the coverage. They would provide the liability coverage. So you wouldn't all come in one single package. Although an agent who sets up the purchasing group might be able to provide a comprehensive package. It might not provide all of the coverage that specific facilities or kinds of facilities have. I mean, it probably would, but maybe it wouldn't provide coverage if you have a swimming pool, or if you provide transportation, or if you have special needs, some things like that. Another possible drawback, but this is a drawback in the admitted market as well, is if they buy surplus lines coverage, which again, they might, has the same drawbacks that the surplus lines coverage does in a single policy. They don't have guarantee protection. They don't have the same level of consumer protection. This is more of sort of a drawback and more of just sort of a sine qua non. You need an experienced agent to work with. Setting up a purchasing group isn't terribly simple. There's management that needs to happen. You have to recruit members. You have to onboard them. You have to negotiate policy terms. You have to oversee compliance. So you need to go out and find a good experienced agent who knows how to do this sort of thing. So the next question, are there any purchasing groups for childcare facilities in Texas? I couldn't find it. Not aware of any. Checked with a couple of agents. Couldn't find one right now. Doesn't mean one couldn't be set up. It may be that nobody's gone to an agent and said, we are interested in this sort of thing. Can you help us with it? I did see on the internet one sort of national one, but I don't know much about it and couldn't get more information. But still, that's one alternative. Another alternative is the Texas Child Care Facility Liability Pool, kind of a mouthful. And the first question that comes up is, does a pool exist today? It does not. There's a statute that exists that would enable the creation of a pool, but nobody has set up a pool yet. So normally insurance is sold through insurance companies, but where availability is a challenge, the legislature has sometimes authorized a creation of a pool. And what is a pool or a risk pool? It's a collection of businesses that basically sort of pool their money to cover potential losses for the whole group. So what would the Texas Child Care Facility Liability Pool be? It would be a pool where where a number of child care facilities band together to provide liability insurance coverage for each other. And there is a statute. The original statute enabling the creation of the pool was enacted in 1991 during sort of a similar time with insurance availability challenges. And that was in House Bill 1083 in the 72nd legislature. It created Insurance Code Article 21.49-18. I mentioned that because then in 2005, they recodified the insurance code and it's now found in Chapter 2205. So what would it take to create a pool? At least 10 childcare facilities would need to get together and agree in writing to participate. They would then appoint a temporary board to draft a plan of operation. And that plan of operation would have to include how to fund startup costs, how to underwrite policies, how to handle claims, how to reserve funds to pay those claims, how to govern the pool. Essentially, they would be kind of creating their own insurance company. So a heavy lift. But other pools have been created in other industries and other states. So sort of in closing, I thought about what would be your next steps that you might want to look at in terms of insurance. One possibility is to go talk to insurance trade associations about the market, about purchasing groups, about ideas they may have. And Kanisha, I think, can get you a list of insurance trade groups with contact information. They're 4 or 5 or 6 of them that work in Texas with different kinds of insurance companies. Another thing you might want to consider is inviting some agents to come talk to you, because they can really tell you what it's like on the ground. I look at things from a regulatory perspective, which is a bit detached. They also have a trade association, the Independent Insurance Agents of Texas, and I feel confident they would be happy to send someone to talk with you and tell you more about the market and availability and how to get insurance. That's pretty much everything I had to say. And can I answer any questions for Kenesha?
If there's any questions? Mr. Cox?
One question, you mentioned that you couldn't find any of the actual groups or anything like that. Are there any of the pools that are already established in Texas, to your knowledge?
There are few. Isn't there a?
Oh, not a child.
No childcare pool.
Okay.
And no childcare
Facility.
groups.
Were you asking about the facility or there were two, we talked about one co-op and one facility liability pool.
Right. One is just a purchasing group
Right.
where you might have an existing group, you go buy policies together. The other is you actually create sort of an entity that provides insurance to all the members, like writes their own insurance. Your premiums fund it,
Okay.
and there's no other company involved.
If there were providers that were interested in setting that up, is there support through like Texas Department of Insurance or anything else to navigate that regulatory environment at all?
You could certainly come talk to us, and I am pretty sure the plan of operation has to be submitted to TDI for approval. So we could talk to you about how to put that together, what we've seen in other pools.
Yeah.
You might talk to Texas Municipal League. They're kind of the biggest entity that has put together a pool like that.
Okay. Thank you all. Thank you very much.
I think Ms. Schuster, we'd like to request kind of a working list of those associations that can lend resources to the providers for that. Ms. Baker, thank you for your presentation. As we noted that the state law basically asks this agency to determine or seek ways to lower insurance costs for child care providers. So I think with that, we're going to be having probably more continued approach with TDI as a resource to the providers. And you had mentioned there was something that was recommended that providers would be able to lower their risks when it comes down to it. It sounded like some best practices that you'd provided. Where is there a working list of any? And I know that these would be recommendations on whether or not child care providers can execute or take action or not. But I'd like to make sure that we do everything we can to give our child care providers those resources and that I'm not sure if there's a list of best practices that you kind of rattled off for a sec.
I don't think we have anything like that, but I think you're going to find that with agents that write insurance for child care facilities. I talked to a couple of them and they sort of were going through a litany of different things that they look for.
Mm-hmm.
So that might be a good place to start.
Okay. Any other questions? Ms. Baker, y'all, thank y'all so much for your presentation. Where TDI is doing. Thank you guys.
Happy to help.
On to agenda item 5, discussion, consideration, and possible action on quad agency review of pre-K partnerships and data collection. Give me 1 second. So members, you should have a briefing paper in your packet related to the initiative, initiating a review of data collection on pre-K partnerships. Quad agency has received some comment regarding issues on local education agencies and their engagement with private child care providers through pre-K partnerships. For us to understand the landscape of current pre-K partnerships that are in place currently, we need to make sure that the state is getting accurate and complete data. This is why we approached this initiative kind of as our inaugural review of processes across the quad agency, across our agencies to basically have identified an issue that we have data that we can improve upon, and also move it through our formal system of reviewing the process. And I know we have a provider had submitted a note that we'll basically submit to record on asking for a little bit more clarity on that process. And I think we'll be discussing that either in the interim to make sure that we have that to show for that request. Let me get back on script. Based on this need, as chairman of the Quad Agency, I am initiating our first Quad Agency review, which will focus on pre-K partnership data collection and a review of the data collection process to see if we can identify any barriers as well as offering potential improvements. Continuing on, as required in state law, we will post the briefing paper with the details of this Quad Agency review on our website, notify stakeholders of the review, and accept public comments for 30 days. Members, do you have any questions on it? Mr. Cochran, did you? Okay. I was forcing him to have a question, which he combated away. Thank you, guys. Seeing no questions, we'll submit the briefing paper and for the process to public comment for the next 30 days. Okay. Moving on to public comment. I think that would almost round out our agency. We have 6 public comment, starting with our in-person, Jacqueline Risa. We'll start with you today. Please make sure the microphone is working. State your name and who you represent, and you have your comment.
Yes, good evening already.
Oh, we'll count that. Yeah.
Afternoon.
Yes.
Okay, I'm over here.
Yeah.
I don't even know.
It's not El Paso time.
I know that's what it is.
Yeah.
My name is Jacqueline Reza, and I do apologize for my voice. I am a little under the weather. But I came all this way from El Paso, Texas, because I wanted to make sure that my voice was heard, and not just mine, but the providers of El Paso, and not just El Paso, but the state of Texas. Children right now we have pre-K programs in our childcare facilities, which is working great, but we are not being informed correctly on how to run these programs. And the information being brought down to us, it's inaccurate. And I think, Ms. Wendy and Ms. Kim gave you guys those surveys, and that information is what we are dealing with. I'm so sorry. We're not against higher standards, but I need to be real with you. The infrastructure of childcare is broken. And because of that, everything being added on top of it isn't landing the way it's supposed to. We're being asked to do more and more, but the system behind it isn't aligned. It isn't consistent, and honestly, it isn't working the same for everyone. Our centers are short-staffed. Our owners and directors are being overworked. That's why some of our owners and directors couldn't make it out here today, because they were short-staffed. And when new regulations or changes are added, I don't think there's enough consideration for what our reality already looks like. Our workforce is already thinned out. Payment discrepancies from childcare providers to homes and centers, children with special needs, those types of the allotment that we can get extra like that. We send off the papers, and then all of a sudden CCS tells us, oh, you need to resubmit. Now it's through TRS. So there's there's not a clear guidance on how to do that. We are already handling about 100 things a day, from staffing, ratios, families, compliance, safety, paperwork, you name it, cooking, driving, and then more requirements get added on top of that. So what happens? Things don't get done the way they should. Not because we don't care, but because we are stretched or we really don't know. One of the things that I'm really excited to be here is to represent the Hispanic community. The Hispanic community, even though like I do speak English well and I can understand it well, but some of the guidance that is being sent to us, it's you read it and everybody interprets it a certain way. So we need to make sure that the guidance brought down to our communities, even especially the Hispanic communities, it's interpreted for them, and not just Hispanic. I've also heard Mandarin. I've also heard other languages that they're not being translated for them. And so when things don't get done the way they should, right? What happens? We get sanctioned. We get SIAs. Right now in El Paso, there was quite a few centers that were placed on, they had to stop their enrollment because they owed money to childcare services. So there, and that was rough. I had parents, and because I'm sorry I didn't start off with that, but I'm also the founder of the Road to Success Association in El Paso, and what we do is we help childcare centers and families get connected to childcare. When that enrollment stopped, a lot of families kept calling us because they were like, I have to go to work, but apparently this center can't take my child because something is wrong with their enrollment. So once we looked into it, we realized that the providers just owed money. They had to pay it. Some of them owed between 5,000, some of them owed up to 20,000, and the enrollment stopped. So another example is KinderConnect. It's supposed to help us with attendance and payments, but instead we're being told what we need to figure out if we get paid correctly. And that's what we're being told by our local workforces about these discrepancies. And that's not okay. We don't even know the system. So how can we really figure out if they're paying us correctly? We should not be responsible for tracking and verifying. That's part of the system's responsibility. At least that's what it feels like. Systems are being built, but providers are being asked to carry the weight of making them work, and it keeps adding up. So then we see inconsistency everywhere. And regarding licensing, right there, I'm going to give you guys an example with TRS and licensing. I had a provider who reached out to me because she said the licensing inspector was about to write her up for a sensory bottle that she had in her area. And I said, okay, well, what's wrong with it? And she said, it's because inside it has little items. And so the inspector says that the bottle was easily, able to be opened and the child could choke. So that's where those two regulations, because for sensory, we do need sensory, like little items, all of those things. So then that's where I saw that the guidance was not clear, right? Because technically the TRS mentor was requiring sensory bottles, then the TRS mentor should have said, you get a bottle, you put hot glue on the top, you glue it together, and then that just makes it more safe for the child. So then it doesn't break any other regulations. And I'm so sorry again. Because in real life, our centers we are the backbone to the workforce. Parents go to work because we exist. Parents will, no, children, I always say the children that we're caring for will be the next ones to take your seat one day. And it's important that we take consideration right now, that we align everything, that we don't just say, okay, you want to do this, she wants to do this, he wants to do this. We need to make sure that we hear from the providers, because I am the provider. I've been doing this for 12 years by the grace of God. This is my 5th year in Texas, and I could tell you guys that I made my way to Austin today because I am tired, and I am a tired provider that loves what she does. And there's many of us like me out there, but we need your guys' help today. And another thing that I just wanted to throw out there, the mentoring process, and I just hope that maybe the TRS can look into this, is it's not clear, and it's not being done right. This year, I trusted the process, right? So I allowed TRS to mentor my directors because I wanted to grow as an owner. What I got instead was stressed directors and stressed teachers, because there's no clarity, no confidence, and not the big picture of why we're doing the high quality care. And I'm not just speaking for myself, I'm speaking for centers across El Paso and Texas. Through TSR, which is a Texas School Ready program, right, which is another entity. That program, we have actually seen the mentoring process work really well. So we know it's out there and it does, the process can be done, but we just need to align every department so that we can make sure that everything gets done correctly. And in regards to pre-K partnerships, one of the things that we have seen is that we are not being paid correctly from our pre-K partnerships. We don't even know exactly when we reach out to I believe it's the TAMUS team, they did explain to us a little bit about the guidance on how they pay versus based on average daily attendance and things like that, but there's no real clear guidance again on how we're supposed to be reimbursed from these pre-K programs. And on top of that, I think the reality here is we need to make sure that all the entities align and they make a plan together. They have to make a plan because, and then like, you know, how Miss Wendy was saying about that organizational chart, because right now we don't know who to reach out to. Even in our local boards, we don't really, like I call them and then they'll tell me, oh, that person doesn't work here anymore. And then it gets thrown off to somebody else and then we got to start all over again. So there's just needs to be a lot of alignment. And I really thank you guys for the time today. And again, I'm so sorry, I'm a little under the weather, but thank you guys. And thank you again for everything you do because the children, the children's future is in your hands. And I need you guys to help us out. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Sis. Members, any questions for Mr. Asa?
No, I just wanted to thank you for coming here all the way from El Paso, especially not feeling well, and sharing your comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Asa, your Workforce Solution Board in El Paso had, I think you're working with Layla, had given us a heads up that of your issues and your situation and willingness to want to meet with us when we're there. We're setting that up and we'll see you in El Paso next time, but we appreciate you coming here. I was very excited to see that your organization, you were able to come here and present to this board, this quad agency. So I definitely commend you on wasting no time and taking a good advantage to speak to these agencies that are helping us here. So thank you again. Appreciate it. Hope you feel better.
Oh, thank you, guys.
Kayla Linder. Kayla, come on up.
They have a chair this time for me. Well, first I would hug you. I don't want to get sick, but I'll hug you from here. Sorry.
State your name, organization, and
Yeah.
you present.
Sorry.
You're right.
Where's mine? I'm Kayla Linder. I am not able to pull up my speech, but give me just a second. I'm so sorry. I got distracted. Good afternoon. Sorry. My name is Kayla Linder, and I'm here today both as a child care provider, as a parent of former foster children, and a working mother of young children. I'm also here as the president of TLCCA, representing several other childcare business owners who were unable to attend today due to staffing shortages, who had to remain in their programs and cover classrooms. I appreciate the purpose of the Quad Agency Initiative, bringing together TWC, HHSC, TEA, and DFPS is an important step towards improving coordination across the early childhood system. I also want to thank the Quad Agency partners for inviting testimony from Early Matters and Children at Risk. I'd like to hug them too. Their work is important, and I would encourage the members to take the time to fully review their reports, which highlight the real challenges facing both providers and families across Texas. As a provider and a parent, I want to say amen to everything that Wendy said. I would also encourage continued engagement with the Texas Licensed Child Care Association as a provider partner. TLCCA represents providers across the state who are ready and willing to offer real-time, on-the-ground feedback to support your work. We're not just representing them, we are providers. Every single board member is a provider. As providers, we are asking for clarity and consistency so we can better understand how to effectively support families, strengthen our businesses, and ultimately serve Texas children. At the same time,
I do want to emphasize that while this information and research is critical, we cannot lose sight of the business realities of childcare. If we do not address the affordability and sustainability of providers, we risk losing the very businesses this system depends on. Without a stable childcare market, there's nothing left to regulate, improve, or study. On the ground, there are structural challenges creating instability for providers, educators, and working families. One of those challenges is the workforce infrastructure. Currently, Texas does not have a centralized system that allows early childhood educators to carry their verified training records, credentials, and background checks with them when they move between employers. Providers often have to re-verify the same information across multiple systems, which slows hiring and adds administrative burden during a time when the sector is already experiencing severe workforce shortages. The fact that multiple providers couldn't be here today because they had to cover their classrooms themselves is not unusual. It reflects the workforce instability we are all navigating. If Texas wants a stable workforce, they should consider building a centralized workforce registry that allows credentials and training, as well as background checks to follow the educator and improve the verification across agencies. Another issue I would encourage the CROD agency partners to consider is the relationship between public school pre-K expansion and the private childcare system. Private childcare providers have built and sustained the early childhood infrastructure that working families rely on, particularly full-day, year-round care. When the school districts expand pre-K programs without meaningful partnerships with community providers, it can unintentionally destabilize that system. When 4-year-olds are pulled out of the private childcare system without real partnership, we don't just lose pre-K seats, we lose infant and toddler capacity. There is also the reality of cost that is often overlooked. School-based pre-K programs often operate on a school day schedule. For working families, that means paying for before care, after care, and summer care. Free pre-K that ends at 2:30 isn't free for working families. It just shifts the cost to other forms of care. More importantly, public policy should strengthen the childcare ecosystem, not unintentionally put government programs in competition with small businesses that built it. Texas already has a pre-K partnership framework. Strengthening those partnerships, rather than unintentionally competing with community providers, would help ensure a more stable, sustainable system. As you review the pre-K partnership data, I would encourage you to examine not only enrollment, but also the impact on childcare capacity, the true cost to working families for both private and public options, and the long-term system sustainability. If we destabilize childcare, we destabilize the workforce, and Texas can't afford that. Thank you.
Thank you, Kayla. Members, any questions or comments? Thank you, Kayla. Appreciate it. On to our next in-person, David Fincher. Please available. Mr. Fincher.
Have to wait for me a little bit.
Thank you. Please state your name and your organization and
Okay.
proceed.
I am David Fincher, and I'm a member of TLCCA. I'm no longer a child care owner. Sold my business about a year ago, but I have spent 30 years doing early child care and education, myself and my wife. And I thank you for the work you're doing. I heard your reports at the start of the meeting pointed out some excellent things that we can do to improve the environment for childcare. The presenters, your invited testimony brought out a lot of important things that for this group to work on. And Kyla just told you what the situation is, but let me take it a little bit farther for you. a significant percentage of childcare entities have closed their doors in the last 5 years. The number varies depending upon which set of data you're looking at, but a big percentage. In addition, about 40% of childcare facilities today, let me make an analogy for you. Anybody ever been to the south rim of the Grand Canyon and walked up and looked over into the Grand Canyon? That's what it feels like. You're standing on the edge and you're either exhilarated or terrified. I confess to both emotions many times, every time that I go. But that's where 40% of our childcare people are today. They're right on the verge. And there are about 30% of them that are making it fine. However, those are located in more affluent areas. They're not serving the low income and the middle income and even the upper middle income. And today, childcare has become unaffordable for a much larger percentage of the people that need childcare. And that's childcare affordability is kind of a buzzword around the Capitol for the last two sessions, and still is. And while that's not in the statute for your charge, I'm assuming that that's an important issue to this body. And there's another buzzword or phrase that's out there. It's called kindergarten readiness. And it's directly related to early childhood education. And we have TEA here, and in fact, responsible for the early childhood portion of TEA. And the situation that we find ourselves in, that Kyla told us really well where we are, is resolvable. It's within our grasp to solve that. But they're connected in a way that you can't solve one without the other. You have to solve them both. And resources are important, but just throwing money at one or the other won't do it. And just take kindergarten readiness for an example. We've been making policy on pre-K for 36 years, starting in 1989. We told the districts that the state will pay for half-day pre-K for eligible children that meet the eligibility requirements. Not very many districts took advantage of that. And in case you're wondering, I was around. I'm quite old, or well seasoned, I'll say. So in 1995, the legislature pushed that policy a little farther. They said, if your district has 15 or more 4-year-old pre-K kids that are eligible for state funding, then as a district, you must provide half-day pre-K for those kids. And 3-year-olds are included in that as well for half-day and state funding. Now, the reason that started in 1989 was that surveys of kindergarten teachers in public schools indicated that only about 50% of our kids were reaching kindergarten ready. So 1989, we said, let's pay for pre-K. 1995, they said, okay, districts, you have to do it. And over the next few years, we learned through studies that still only about 50% of our kids were getting to pre-K. Getting to kindergarten ready. So in 2003, we did a pilot project called Texas School Ready. And guess what? That project gave us some really good data, and we learned that it is possible to prepare pre-K kids for kindergarten. So we were headed down the right path. But for some reason, we veered off of that. And we said, let's use Texas Rising Star to do what we were trying to get Texas School Ready to do. That didn't work. And I was part of the advisory committee enhancing the standards of Texas Rising Star, which has been in existence for 30 years. So we kept following kindergarten readiness, and it's still at about 50% today. 50% of the kids getting to kindergarten are kindergarten ready. So in 2015, the governor said, we need high quality pre-K. So we wrote policy, we set up the standards, subchapter E1 of chapter 29 of the Education Code that said, here is what high quality pre-K looks like. 2015. 2020 or 2019, still only about 50% of our kids get to kindergarten ready, based on beginning of year assessments. So 2019, we passed HB3, which said that 4-year-olds, public school districts, must do full day pre-K for 4-year-olds, with a lot of criteria around that, a lot of wiggle room and all. And so we look at it today and we're still at 50%. But then at the same time, this is where the connection comes in. At the same time that we moved pre-K from voluntary for school districts to mandatory for school districts to full day for school districts, at the same time, we are moving 3- and 4-year-old children out of the private early care and education programs. And you had a question earlier about the cost of care for an infant and a toddler, and how that's gotten, Wendy mentioned that in her presentation. Well, the reason that pre-K and that infant and toddler tuitions were manageable before now were the fact that people in the business of childcare, early care and education, subsidize those tuitions with their tuitions for their 3- and 4-year-olds. And now they don't have those 3- and 4-year-olds to subsidize it, so those tuitions have to go up. And I'll go back to the start of my presentation. We can fix it, and we can fix it with a reasonable amount of dollars, but we can't fix it within existing resources or for no dollars. But we can fix it. And I'll stop there, and if we want to talk about how we can fix it, we'll do that. But I thank you for your time, and I thank everybody that made testimony today. They talked about very important things that we need to do. But if we don't have the entity that we're trying to improve regulation of, there won't be any point in what trying to improve regulation. And that's where we are today with Texas Child Care.
Thank you, Mr. Fincher. Members, any comments or questions?
Okay.
Mr. Fincher, we'll follow up.
Thank you.
We'll reach out.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next in person, Brian Van Dyke. Sorry, Brian. Name, organization, and commits your comment.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. My name is Brian Van Dyke. I'm here representing Texas Licensed Child Care Association, as well as providing testimony on several matters I believe deserve careful consideration. First and foremost, a lot of the issues I originally planned to speak about have been talked about several times, so I'm just going to kind of cut and paste a lot of things here to preserve some time. First, I want to address the expansion of public pre-K and school districts and its impact on community-based childcare providers, the workforce, and local economies. While expanding access to early education is a worthy goal, the way in which it's being pursued carries real consequences. As families are drawn into school district pre-K programs, community-based providers lose enrollments. The loss of those enrollments also create financial pressure on providers, leading to wage suppression, higher turnover, and a migration of skilled early childhood professionals out of that field entirely. Perhaps one of the more critically issues is as we reduce the number of community-based providers operating in our communities, we will see a decline in the percentage of children who are truly kindergarten ready. These providers are deeply embedded in our communities, and have built expertise around early childhood development that cannot simply be replaced. I urge the agency to weigh these consequences seriously while moving forward. Secondly, regarding stakeholder feedback, providers are investing their time and voices in these hearings, and it matters that those voices are acted upon meaningfully. I ask the agency to clearly outline how feedback from providers will be compelled, how it will also be shared back to the participants, and what the process and timeline will be for decision-making following these hearings. Third, I want to speak on the importance of aligning standards across all agencies involved in a quad agency. After all, this alignment is at the very heart of why this quad agency was created. When providers are navigating multiple agencies with different standards and requirements, it creates unnecessary confusion, administrative burden, and an uneven playing field. Earlier as discussed, the confusion between childcare regulations inspectors and also TRS mentors. I want to take that a step further and talk about TRS mentors and assessors. The same confusion happens between them. So you can also have an inspector say one thing, a TRS mentor say something else about the same subject, and then you can have an assessor come in and say something about the same subject as well. So now you're having three complete different stories about one subject. So we're talking about, being consistent across one subject. I know that's, one thing, that's just one simple issue that we can continue to talk about, within the quad agency. But in closing, I want to continue to fully support this agency in the direction it is heading. I simply ask that as decisions are being made, stakeholders' best interests remain at the forefront. When providers thrive, the children and communities they serve thrive as well. So thank you for your time and have a good afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. Van Dyke. Members, any questions?
Brian, thank you. And you mentioned assessors. Can you remind me what that is?
Yes, so assessors are coming that do assessments for TRS accreditation. So it's whenever whenever they're getting accredited to receive subsidy or get their TRS accreditation rating. That's kind of the third party program who comes in to assess them for their accreditation.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any questions? Thank you, Mr. Van Dyke.
Thank you.
Attending virtually, Rayshawn Webb. We can unmute and. We're going to come to our next virtual commenter, Tim Kaminsky, attending virtually. We can unmute and. Tim.
Can you guys hear me?
I hear you, Tim.
Hey guys, nice to see y'all today. Thank you for the work that you've been doing and the work that's ahead of you. What I want to do is paint a picture for you of what childcare is possibly going to look like over the course of the next several months. Back in 2019, prior to COVID hitting, we had over 18,000 licensed childcare programs in the state. By May of 2020, in the height of COVID, we were down to a little over 6,000. And since that time, we have built back up to a little over 14,000. However, mostly that was due to ARPA funds, PP funds that kept providers going. All of those funds carried us through up until this past May while everybody was continuing to operate around 50% enrollment. In 2019, with the passage of House Bill 3, which was going to cause the public schools to have to start providing full-day pre-K for those that qualified, we were in a situation where we were supposed to be able to partner with the school districts. There was a waiver period in place. Most of the schools opted to use the waiver. And then when COVID hit in 2020, everything shut down for 2 years. And so really didn't have an opportunity to do anything, although we were still open, the public schools were closed. But as schools started opening back up in 22 and 23, the students that should have been enrolling for the free pre-K were not enrolling in the numbers that were anticipated. And so in order to backfill those classrooms that they've set up for pre-K, they've hired the teachers and so forth, those superintendents in certain districts that are knowledgeable about rules and regulations that have been passed maybe years ago started using an option of taking in private pay pre-K into their programs. At first, it was in very small numbers, but then in 23 and 24, we started to see a ramp up in the ISDs actually marketing to the public that they had these private pay pre-K programs. And in some cases, they would be charging about half of what the local providers were doing. Now, this is based off of a bill that was passed back in 2008, allowing public schools to charge for private pay pre-K. But at the time, because they weren't forced to do pre-K at all, they didn't do anything with it. And so I understand why superintendents have taken charge of that now and use that, because like us, if they don't have enrollment, they don't have reimbursements to support the school. So in 2024, that was probably the first big year that we saw a mass exodus of students out of our programs. And we started kind of raising the alarm, letting people know that this was happening, but our legislators even don't really understand that this is happening. But in 2025, it went to a new level. And pretty much almost every district across the state had some kind of program that was promoting the private pay pre-K. And at the end of August and the 1st of September, once school was in session, on average, most providers lost 14 students to the public school pre-K. And what that represents in dollars for the private providers is $14,000 a month. That's our profit margin money. And it didn't happen just in one area, it happened in multiple areas. And some providers lost more than that, because if you had 2 programs, you lost up to 28 kids. And the thing is, once that happens and the school year started, there's no way to recoup that going into the end of the year. And so once that started happening, there were providers that couldn't sustain, and so they ended up closing. Now we're coming into this next school year, 26-27. And already we know that the public schools are concerned because of the voucher program and how many students might be leaving their programs. We know that there is still not a big push to try to get the children that qualify for the free into the schools. So what are the public schools going to have to do? They're going to have to push even harder for the private pay pre-K to come into their programs. If that happens, or I should say when that happens, late August and September, the remaining providers that are still struggling to get through even just this summer will end up having to shut down. So instead of 14,000, we may be back down to that 7,000. Now, I know that's not something that this particular agency group of people are charged with, and we're going to be forward thinking with how do we make regulations and compliance things easier in the future. But I know there's a TEA representative in the room there. We have a major pending crisis of a magnitude that's not hit our industry since COVID. And so I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention, because again, the work that you're doing is important. It's needed. It's something we've been asking for 10 years. So we're very thankful now that there is at least one entity in the state that's coming together to look at all of the different systems that collide with childcare and the childcare providers. But I would encourage you, as you're moving forward through this, there is a financial obligation to anything that is put into play. And in each of your agencies, I would encourage you, as you're looking at programs, that you're looking at systems, bring in a provider and have them be there side by side with you in the beginning. It can help move through the process much quicker. I know government, state government, local government moves slowly. But in this situation, we're dealing with businesses, we're dealing with small businesses, we're dealing with legacy businesses. My family's business has been around for 42 years. This is the first year that we've not had a pre-K class. I have absolutely no 4-year-olds in my building right now. And if that continues, all of that will go away. And so we're looking to you for support. We've already created some great relationships with TWC and with Health and Human Services. We'd like to do the same thing with TEA. And we just want to move forward in partnership with you guys. So anything that we can do, we appreciate the surveys that were done on the behalf of the providers. And now we're here as TLCCA representing those operators to say, what can we do? How can we work with you to move things along a little bit faster in the system? And with that, if you have any questions, please let me know.
Thank you, Mr. Kaminsky. Members, any questions for Tim Kaminsky? Thank you for your input, Mr. Kaminsky. One more ask for Ray Sean Webb, attending virtually if they're available. Please unmute. Members, we also had written submitted written comments. If you see your packet, Sharon Perry from Kids Are Kids, also from Kids Are Kids, Kinjal Mehta has submitted a list of recommendations from them on their comment. This concludes our public comment section, and I would like to express my appreciation to all of our public commenters, everybody, especially those that came from El Paso, from far away. And we know this is your time. This is your time that you are not in your facilities. You are not caring for your charges or not working with your parents. So we appreciate the opportunity to have this and for us to be available for you to make good time wisely on this. So we appreciate that again. Also this time, as we are technically we're an open meeting. We've got quorum in here. Commissioner Trevino, Commissioner Connett, definitely wanted to see if y'all had any comments to give to your quad agency here. I know I believe, and I kind of want to say it, I'm not breaking any rules by referring to the idea of a central registration for credentials. That echoes a lot of what we're doing with credentialing wallets and credentialing libraries. So I'm hoping there may be some work that we could discuss at a more appropriate time to see what we can do for that. But I asked commissioners if you had any comments to give to the agency. You're free to come up and say it. Thank you, commissioners. We appreciate it. I will speak for my fellow commissioners and my appreciation for the surveys, for the presenters, for our state agencies, TDI, and for Jack for being on the ball with for being on the ball with some batteries when these things go down. So we appreciate that. I would ask for a motion to adjourn, unless members, if you have any other comments or questions you'd like to. Make a motion. Motion to adjourn is made.
I'll second it.
Probably seconded, and it is seconded, and I also vote for adjournment. Thank you guys for being here. We are adjourned.